She stands frozen at the Christmas market, champagne glass trembling in her hand, as her ex-boyfriend's voice cuts through the festive music. Still playing the innocent virgin card, Marietta? The crowd's laughter dies the instant a black Mercedes pulls up. A man in a tailored suit steps out. His eyes find hers first, not David's, and the protective fury in his gaze makes her heart stop. Inside the Mercedes, 3 men wear identical silver pins, the mark nobody in this city dares to acknowledge. What David doesn't know is that Marietta stopped being naive the day she held a dying man's hand and whispered translations that saved his brother's life. But that's just the beginning. The Mafia boss approaching isn't just protecting an asset. The single white rose his driver hands him, the way his jaw tightens hearing David's words, the diamond bracelet that appeared on Marietta's doorstep last week with no note. These aren't gestures of business. Marietta Thomas is a freelance translator who built her reputation on discretion and perfection. For 6 months, she believed the expensive gifts from her most important client were gratitude for professional excellence. Nothing more. 3 hours ago, she agreed to meet David at this Christmas market to prove she'd moved on. What she doesn't know is that someone else has spent 6 months trying to find the courage to tell her she'll never have to move on alone again. The white roses delivered every Friday. The secure apartment 3 floors below his penthouse. The cafe owner paid to make sure she always feels welcome. The 183 days of surveillance footage showing his car in the background, watching from a distance. All of it was love disguised as protection. What happens next will reveal not just an empire she's been protecting, but a heart she unknowingly captured. But before I show you what happened when love and power collided in the middle of a Christmas market, you need to understand how a mafia boss who never showed weakness fell for the woman who saw him at his most vulnerable. Because this love story didn't start with this confrontation. It started 6 months earlier, in a hospital waiting room at 2 a.m., when Marietta held the hand of a bleeding stranger and said 5 words in Korean that changed everything. Your brother will survive this. The man who never cried wept. And she pretended not to notice. To understand how Marietta Thomas discovered she'd been loved for 6 months without knowing it, we need to go back to 3 days before the Christmas market. Back to when her life still made perfect sense. Marietta's apartment in Gangnam sits on the 14th floor of a building she could barely afford 2 years ago. Now, the rent doesn't even make her blink. Freelance translation pays well when you're good. Pays exceptionally well when you're discreet. And Marietta Thomas built her entire reputation on 2 things: flawless Korean to English medical translation, and the ability to stand in emergency rooms at 2 a.m. without asking questions that don't concern her. What Marietta didn't know was that one of those powerful men had been asking questions about her for months. Personal questions. Questions that had nothing to do with translation accuracy. Her clients are doctors, pharmaceutical companies, and one private consulting firm that pays triple her rate and always requests her personally. She assumed it was because she never flinched, never gossiped, never made the powerful men she translated for feel uncomfortable about the blood on their hands or the desperation in their voices. Every Friday for 6 months, white roses appeared at her door. No card, no signature. She told herself they were from the building management, some luxury service she didn't remember signing up for. The diamond bracelet that appeared last week? A client gift. Excessive, sure, but wealthy people gave excessive gifts. That's just how they operated. David's text came on a Tuesday evening while she was reviewing a medical contract. Coffee? I want to prove we can be adults about this. She stared at the message for 10 minutes. 3 years of her life ended 8 months ago with his voice still echoing in her head. You're too boring, Marietta. Too innocent. You live in a fantasy world where everyone's nice and nothing bad ever happens. It's exhausting. Now Marietta thought David wanted closure, maybe even to apologize. But here's what she didn't discover until the Mercedes pulled up at the Christmas market. David had been following her for 3 weeks. His new girlfriend worked for a rival organization, and they'd been trying to confirm one specific piece of intelligence: whether Park Min-jun's most trusted translator was just an employee or something much more valuable, something that could be used as leverage, something that could make the untouchable man vulnerable. The surveillance photos in David's apartment showed Marietta leaving her building, entering her favorite cafe, walking through Gangnam at night. What David didn't know was that in the background of 5 of those photos, barely visible, was a black Mercedes. And inside that Mercedes, Park Min-jun sat watching the same woman, making sure she got home safely. He'd been doing it for 183 days. What Marietta didn't realize as she typed her response was that her Tuesday evening decision would set off a chain reaction Park's security team had been dreading for weeks. She responded to David's text, "Christmas market on Friday? The one in Gangnam-gu. 6 p.m. Neutral territory. Public. Safe." She hit send and went back to her contract review. What Marietta couldn't see, what she'd forgotten in the chaos of her normal life, was the night that changed everything. 6 months ago, 2 a.m., Seoul National Hospital Emergency Wing. She'd been called in for an emergency translation. Gunshot wound. Korean patient, English-speaking surgical team. She arrived in 15 minutes, still in her pajamas under a winter coat, and found a man collapsed in the waiting room. Not the patient's brother. Park Min-jun sat with his head in his hands, blood on his shirt, his entire body shaking. 42 years old, controlled every shadow in Seoul's underground, and he was falling apart in a hospital hallway because his younger brother was dying. Marietta didn't hesitate. She knelt beside him. "Your brother will survive this," she said in Korean. 5 words, clean and certain. He looked up at her. His face was wet. For the next 2 hours, she stayed. Whispered translations every time a doctor came out. Updates on vitals, on surgery progress, on blood loss and stabilization. Her hand covered his. Not professionally, not carefully, just human touch when someone was breaking. When the doctor finally said, "He's stable," Park Min-jun wept. And he whispered, in broken, heavily accented English, the only English words Marietta ever heard him speak. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," over and over, like a prayer, like she'd saved not just his brother but his entire world. She pretended not to notice his tears, pretended not to feel how tightly he gripped her hand, pretended not to see the way he looked at her when his brother's heartbeat steadied on the monitor. Like she was a miracle. Marietta left that night thinking she'd done a good deed for a desperate stranger. She had no idea she'd just met the man who would spend the next 6 months falling completely, hopelessly in love with her. Friday evening at the Christmas market, Marietta stood with her champagne glass, trying to remember why she'd agreed to see David again. The festive lights felt too bright. The crowd pressed too close. Then David's voice cut through everything. "Still playing the innocent virgin card, Marietta?" The crowd laughed. Blood rushed in her ears. And then a hand, warm, steady, pressing against the small of her back. Not possessive, protective. The touch triggered something. A memory, not just a memory, but multiple memories. That conference 3 months ago when she delivered translated contracts. Park's hand had steadied her elbow when the room got crowded. She'd thought it was accidental. The document exchange last month. His fingers had brushed hers. She'd dismissed it as careless. Every meeting where he somehow ended up standing between her and strangers. where his body became a wall, casual but deliberate. The muscle memory flooded back. This touch, Park's hand on her back. She knew this touch. Her body had been learning it for months without her brain catching on. She turned. Park Min-joon stood behind her in a tailored black suit, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on David with an expression that made the air feel dangerous. But when his gaze shifted to her, just for a second, everything in that look was gentle. And Marietta realized with sudden, shocking clarity, every accidental touch had been him, learning her, protecting her, wanting to be close in the only way he thought he could. When Park's hand pressed more firmly against her back, she didn't pull away. She leaned into it, and everything David was about to say next would force both of them to stop pretending. Park Min-joon doesn't look at David when he steps forward. His entire focus is on Marietta. The Christmas market crowd goes silent. Not the comfortable silence of people watching street performers. The tense, breathless silence of people who recognize danger even when they can't name it. David's smirk falters. Who the hell? Step back from her. Park's voice is quiet, polite even, but there's something in it that makes three people in the crowd instinctively move away. Marietta feels Park's hand still pressed against her back. And for the first time in 6 months of professional interactions, she notices something she's never seen before. His hand is shaking, barely. A tremor so slight she wouldn't catch it if she weren't paying attention. A man who controls Seoul's underground is nervous. Because of her. David laughs. It sounds forced. Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private conversation. It stopped being private when you raised your voice at her. Park's jaw tightens. When you humiliated her in front of strangers. Behind Park, 3 men in dark suits stand near the Mercedes, each wearing a silver pin on their lapel, the mark of Park's inner circle, the symbol everyone in Gangnam knows but nobody acknowledges. One of them, the youngest, with a scar above his left eyebrow, catches Marietta's eye and smiles. Not threatening, almost fond, like he's watching something he's been waiting to see for a long time. Now Marietta thought this was about her professional work. That Park was protecting a valuable translator, an asset. But here's what she didn't discover until much later that night. When Park's security chief pulled her aside, every single one of Park's men had been briefed on her favorite coffee order, her schedule, the route she walked home. They'd been watching over her for 6 months, and every one of them knew why. Their boss was in love, and they'd been watching him try to hide it, watching him become gentler, quieter, more careful with his words whenever she was near. The youngest guard had won the betting pool 3 months ago when he correctly predicted Park would give her his mother's bracelet before New Year's. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Standing in the Christmas market, Marietta had no idea what his men already knew. Park turns slightly, addressing the crowd but keeping his body angled toward Marietta. Protective. Always protective. Some of you know me, he says in Korean, then switches to English. Some of you know what I do. My translator has a code name in my organization. We call her Cypher. His voice is professional, detached. The voice of a man discussing business arrangements. Then he says her real name, Marietta. The way he pronounces it, soft, careful, like he's been practicing how to say it without revealing too much, makes something in Marietta's chest tighten. There's tenderness in those 2 syllables, a gentleness that doesn't match the rest of his words. His men exchange glances. The youngest one actually grins. They knew. All of them knew. Everyone knew but her. She is under my protection. Park continues, his voice hardening again. She has been for 6 months. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. David's face drains of color. Look, I didn't know. You didn't need to know. Park's tone could cut glass. You needed to be a decent human being. You failed. Marietta watches David process this. Watch him do the math, translator, protection, 6 months. She can see the moment he decides this is just business. That she's just an employee Park values. He doesn't see what she's starting to see. Doesn't notice how Park positions himself between her and the crowd. How his hand on her back isn't possessive but gentle. Like he's asking permission just by touching her. How he keeps glancing at her. Checking if she's okay. If she wants him to stop. If this is too much. This isn't protection. This is personal. The bracelet on her wrist, someone says from the crowd. A man in an expensive coat, older, with the kind of face that's seen things. That's. He stops. Stares. The man takes a step back. Others in the crowd notice. The whispers start in Korean, spreading like wildfire. That's Park's mother's bracelet. The one he refused to sell. Even when the organization was bankrupt, he wouldn't. He swore he'd only give it to. The crowd's reaction tells Marietta what she hadn't understood. This isn't just expensive jewelry. This is a declaration. Park's mother wore this bracelet until her death 15 years ago. It's been in a vault since then. Park rebuilt his entire empire from nothing, and there were years when selling this bracelet could have saved him. Could have paid debts, bought safety, secured territory. He kept it and waited for her. Marietta stares at the diamonds on her wrist. The bracelet she thought was a generous client gift. The bracelet that appeared on her doorstep last week with no note, no explanation. Park's voice is quiet, meant only for her. It looks better on you than it ever did in a box. The way he says it, like he's been imagining this moment for months. Like seeing her where it makes something in him settle, breaks through every professional boundary she's built. Park, she whispers. This is, I know. He still won't look directly at her. Like if he does, he'll reveal too much. I know what it means. I knew when I left it for you. David is backing away now, finally understanding he stumbled into something far more dangerous than an awkward conversation with an ex. He interrupted something that looks like business but feels like a proposal. I should go, David stammers. This was a mistake. I didn't mean. You did mean it. Park's attention snaps back to him. That's the problem. The tension in the air shifts. The guards behind Park move slightly, not threatening but ready. And Marietta realizes David isn't leaving this market until Park decides he can leave. But what happens next will reveal not just how much power Park has in this city, but how much control he's willing to give up for the woman who saved his brother's life and captured his heart without even trying. I see you there, feeling all the feelings about Park giving Marietta his mother's bracelet. Now be honest, you've been watching for 13 minutes without subscribing. Haven't you? Here's the thing. If you wait until the end, you'll forget. You'll close the video, go about your day, and this story will just become another YouTube memory. But if you subscribe right now, you're telling me, keep making stories about love that's worth the risk. Don't let this be the story you loved but never supported. Subscribe. I will wait. Now let's see what happens when Park's guards escort David away from the Christmas market. Park's guards escort David away from the Christmas market within minutes. Not violently, not dramatically, just efficiently, the way you remove something unwanted. Marietta expects Park to leave too, to nod politely and return to whatever shadowy business he runs. Instead, he turns to her. I need to show you something. His voice is careful. Will you come with me? It's a question, not a command. A powerful man asking permission. She looks at the bracelet on her wrist. At the white rose his driver is still holding. At the crowd of people pretending not to stare. Yes, she says. The Mercedes interior smells like leather and something expensive she can't name. Park sits across from her, not beside her, giving her space. His hands rest on his knees, and she notices for the first time that he's wearing no rings, no watch, nothing flashy. Just the simple silver pin on his lapel that marks him as someone important in a world she's only glimpsed through her translation work. David has been following you, Park says quietly. For 3 weeks. Marietta's stomach drops. Following me? My security team noticed 2 weeks ago. He pulls out a tablet, hesitates. I need you to see this, not to frighten you, to help you understand why I intervened tonight. He turns the screen toward her. The footage is time-stamped, professional. David outside her apartment building. David at the coffee shop where she works most mornings. David trailing 20 feet behind her through a shopping district. In every shot, he's watching her, taking photos with his phone. Now Marietta thought David was just bitter about their breakup, nursing his wounded ego by trying to prove she hadn't really moved on. But here's what she didn't discover until Park's security chief spoke to her the next day. David's new girlfriend worked for the Kim organization, Park's main rivals in Seoul's underground economy. They'd been trying to confirm whether Park had any emotional vulnerabilities they could exploit. Any person he cared about enough to make mistakes for. The surveillance wasn't about David's ego at all. It was reconnaissance. And if Marietta had touched Park at that market, if she'd shown any sign of affection, David had orders to make sure the moment was captured on camera. Marietta had no idea that the next piece of footage would answer a question she'd never thought to ask. Why did her night walks always feel safe? Watching footage of her ex-boyfriend stalking her, Marietta had no idea how close she'd come to becoming leveraged in a war she didn't know existed. But the surveillance footage was about to reveal something that would make Marietta question everything she thought she knew about coincidence. Because in one particular video, the timestamp would prove impossible. I'm sorry you have to see this, Park says. But there's something else. He taps the tablet. The footage changes. Same timestamps. Same locations. But now Marietta sees herself through a different lens. There, in the background of the shot from 2 weeks ago, outside her apartment. A black Mercedes parked half a block away. There, in the cafe footage from 10 days ago. The same car visible through the window. There, in the shopping district video from last week. The Mercedes followed at a careful distance. Park's voice is quiet. My security chief wants me to tell you that I've personally monitored your safety for 183 days. Marietta stares at the screen. In one video, she can actually see into the Mercedes. See Park sitting in the back seat, his face turned toward her building. Watching, waiting, making sure she got home safely. You've been following me for 6 months? Her voice comes out smaller than she intended. Not following. Park's jaw tightens. Protecting. There's a difference. Is there? I never approached you outside of work. Never interfered in your life. He trails off, looking away. I needed to know you were safe. The security chief, a man in his 50s sitting in the front seat, clears his throat. Ma'am, if I may. The boss watches these feeds every night. Every single night. I've worked for him for 20 years, and I've never seen him care about anything the way he cares about your safety. Park shoots him a look that could kill. Marietta's mind races through 6 months of her life, seeing it differently now. The apartment she thought was a lucky find. How did you find this place? She'd asked the realtor, who'd smiled and said, a client recommended it specifically for you. The cafe where she works most mornings. The one that always has her favorite corner table available You're our best customer," the owner always says, but Marietta only buys one coffee and stays for hours. The walking route she takes home at night that always feels strangely safe, even in a city where women don't usually walk alone after dark. All of it, orchestrated, protected, loved. "The apartment," she says slowly. "The one you recommended. Where is it exactly?" Park's silence is an answer. "Park, where?" "3 floors below my penthouse." He finally meets her eyes. "I visited 17 coffee shops before I found one where I thought you'd feel comfortable. Quiet, good lighting, close enough that I could." He stops. "That my men could respond quickly if anything happened. The cafe owner knows you." It's not a question. Park doesn't answer, but the security chief does. "Boss went 3 times in the first month. Just sat in the corner booth. Ordered nothing. Watched you work." The owner tried to take his order, and the boss gave him a $100 tip and one request. "Make sure she always feels welcome here." Marietta remembers those early days at the cafe. How the owner had seemed unusually friendly from the first day. How her favorite table was always available. How he'd started knowing her coffee order before she said it. 3 times, she whispers. "I couldn't stay away." Park's voice is rough. "I tried. After that night in the hospital, I thought I could keep it professional. Just hire you for translations. But then you smiled at someone in that cafe, and he stops. Collects himself. "I wanted to be someone who could make you smile like that. Without guards. Without danger. Someone who could just sit across from you and have coffee." The tablet shows another video. This one is older, grainier. Security footage from inside the cafe. Marietta sees herself laughing at something a customer said. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, sits Park, alone, watching her with an expression she's never seen on his face before. Longing. Pure, unguarded longing. "I wanted to tell you," Park says quietly. "Every day for 6 months I wanted to tell you. But He doesn't finish. Doesn't need to. A flashback plays on the tablet, recent footage from what looks like a hospital room. Park sits beside a hospital bed where a younger man lies recovering. His brother. "Just tell her," his brother says in Korean. The English subtitles appear automatically, and Marietta realizes Park programmed this specifically for her to understand. "I can't," Park responds. "A man in my position." She deserves someone who can take her to dinner without a security team. Someone whose love won't put her in danger. "Hyung." His brother's voice is gentle. "She held your hand when you were covered in my blood. She didn't flinch. Maybe you're not giving her enough credit. Maybe I'm not willing to risk her life to find out." The video ends. Marietta sits in the Mercedes, surrounded by evidence of 6 months of silent devotion. Every safety measure wasn't security. It was love. Love too afraid to speak its name. Love that protected from a distance because coming closer felt too dangerous. And sitting across from her is the man who orchestrated it all. Looking at her like he's waiting for a verdict he's sure will be rejection. But what she's about to say next will change everything. Because the question isn't whether Park's love is dangerous. The question is whether Marietta is brave enough to love him back. The Mercedes doesn't take them back to the Christmas market. Park tells his driver to find somewhere quiet, somewhere private. They end up in a parking garage, expensive, empty, the kind of place where powerful people meet when they don't want to be seen. Park steps out of the car first. His guards stay behind, giving them space. He removes his gloves slowly, and Marietta notices his hands are shaking. Just slightly, the kind of tremor you'd miss if you weren't watching for it. "I need to tell you something," he says, And after I do, you'll have a choice to make. Marietta's heart pounds. The bracelet on her wrist suddenly feels heavy. 6 months ago, you saved my brother's life. But you did something else that night too. Park won't look at her. He stares at his hands instead, at the gloves he's holding. You saw me at my absolute worst, covered in blood, falling apart, and you didn't flinch. You didn't judge. You just stayed. Park, let me finish, please. His voice cracks. Because if I don't say this now, I never will. The parking garage is silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Christmas lights from the city reflect off the concrete walls, turning everything gold and red. I can offer you safety, Park continues. A new identity. Enough money to start anywhere in the world. New York, London, Tokyo, anywhere you want to go. Far away from me and everything I represent. He pauses, takes a breath. Or you can stay. Now Marietta thought this was about witness protection, about keeping her safe from whatever danger David's surveillance had created. But here's what she didn't understand until Park's next words shattered every professional boundary between them. This wasn't about safety protocols or organizational damage control. This was a man who'd spent 6 months building a life around her from a distance, trying to give her everything he thought she deserved, and now realizing he had to offer her the one thing he'd never planned to give, the truth about why he couldn't let her go. In his penthouse apartment, there's a drawer filled with unsent letters, 183 of them, one for every day he watched her from his car, watched her smile at cafe customers, watched her live her life completely unaware that someone loved her enough to let her stay unaware. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Standing in that parking garage, Marietta had no idea those letters existed. Before you choose, Park says, and his voice breaks completely now, I need you to know, I haven't been protecting an asset. I've been protecting the woman I love. I have been since the night you held my hand and didn't flinch at the blood. You know what Park did for 183 days? He showed up. Every single night, he watched those security feeds to make sure Marietta was safe. He showed up even when she didn't know he existed. I'm asking you to show up for me the same way. Subscribe, because creators like me pour our hearts into stories like this, and the only way we survive is if you hit that button. Don't just consume the story, support it and subscribe now. The words hang in the air between them. Marietta can't breathe, can't think. The parking garage spins slightly. The gifts, Park continues quietly. The apartment, the cafe, the roses every Friday, those weren't business gestures. They were a man trying to be close to you in the only way he knew how. A man who wanted to take you to dinner but couldn't without bringing 6 guards. A man who wanted to bring you flowers personally but was afraid his world would destroy yours. You're a mafia boss, Marietta whispers. I'm a translator who helps injured strangers. This isn't, we're not. I know. Park finally looks at her. His eyes are wet. I know what I am. But you're not just a translator, Marietta. You're the woman who saw me at my worst and showed me kindness. You're the reason I started those legitimate businesses. The shipping company, the tech investments. I needed something legal, something clean, because I kept imagining a future where maybe he stops, shakes his head. You're the reason I want to be better. Marietta's mind races. Every romance novel she's ever read warned her about dangerous men. Red flags, love bombing, control disguised as protection. But none of those books prepared her for this. For a dangerous man trying desperately to be gentle. For someone who spent 183 days watching her from a distance because coming closer felt like putting her in danger. For love that looked like letting go even when holding on was all he wanted. I can't promise you a normal life, Park says. I can't promise Sunday morning coffee shops without security. I can't promise that my enemies won't try to use you against me. But I can promise. A phone buzzes. Sharp. Urgent. Park security chief appears at the edge of the parking garage. His face grim. Sir, we have a problem. And then everything Park had carefully controlled for 6 months was about to spiral beyond his reach. In the Mercedes, the tablet screen shows new footage. David at the Christmas market, but the video quality is different now. Clearer, like it was recorded from a wire, not a security camera. We found this on him, the security chief says. He presses play. David's voice comes through, tinny but audible. Following her for 3 weeks like you asked. She meets him for work. But that's it. No personal contact. Nothing else. Another voice interrupts. Older. Korean accent. The bracelet. Did you see the bracelet? Yeah, some expensive jewelry, but that's Park's mother's bracelet, you idiot. The voice is sharp now. Excited. He gave it to her. We need proof of emotional attachment. Make her touch him. Make her show affection. We need it on camera. Silence on the recording. Then David. And if she does? Then we finally have leverage. The untouchable Park Min-joon has a weakness. And weaknesses can be exploited. The recording cuts off. Marietta stares at the tablet. Her hands have gone cold. They planted the wire 3 days ago. Park security chief explains. Your ex was supposed to provoke you, make you reach for Park in the market, show some kind of emotional connection. They were filming everything. Park's jaw tightens. If I had touched you back, if I'd shown any reaction beyond professional protection, we'd both be targets. Marietta finishes. The dangerous choice crystallizes in front of her. If Park admits his feelings publicly, shows love instead of business interest, he puts them both in danger. His rivals will use her as leverage, as a weapon against him. But if he stays cold, if he treats her like just another employee, he loses the chance to tell her what she now knows he's wanted to say for 6 months. And Marietta realizes, every decision Park has made for the past 6 months has been this same choice. Love her from a distance or risk her safety by coming closer. He's been choosing her safety every single time. Until tonight, when she stood humiliated in a Christmas market and he couldn't stay away anymore. They wanted proof, Marietta says slowly. They wanted to see if you'd choose me over your safety. Park nods. His hands are shaking again. And Marietta understands something the rival gang doesn't. Something David never understood about her either. She's not naive. She's never been naive. She's just been waiting for someone worth the risk. What happens now? She asks quietly. Park looks at her like he's memorizing her face. Like this might be the last time they're alone together. Now, he says, you choose. And whatever you choose, I'll make sure you're safe. Even if that means staying far away from you for the rest of my life. But Marietta has already made her choice. She made it the moment she saw 183 days of surveillance footage showing a powerful man sitting alone in his car, watching her from a distance, making sure she was safe even when she didn't know he existed. What she says next will change both their lives forever. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying safe. It's choosing to be loved by someone dangerous enough to keep you safe, gentle enough to let you go, and vulnerable enough to admit he never wanted to. The wire's audio crackles through the tablet speaker, and the rival gang leader's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. Make her touch him. We need confirmation of emotional attachment. Visual proof. Park's security chief tenses. His hand moves to his earpiece, ready to give the extraction order. 3 cars are already positioned at exit points around the parking garage. They can have Marietta in a safe house within 8 minutes. New identity documents within 3 days. A flight to London within a week. Park himself goes completely still. His eyes close for just a second, like he's preparing for loss. Like he's already accepted that keeping Marietta safe means watching her disappear from his life. The smart choice is obvious. Extract her. Protect her. Let her go. But Marietta is looking at the tablet screen, at 6 months of surveillance footage showing a powerful man sitting alone in his car, making sure she got home safely. At the cafe owner's testimony about Park watching her smile at strangers, never approaching because he didn't want his world to touch hers. At 183 days of white roses delivered with no signature because he thought she deserved beauty without obligation. Now Marietta thought this moment was about choosing between safety and danger. Between a normal life far away and a complicated one beside a man whose world runs on violence and control. But here's what she didn't understand until Park's next words revealed everything. This wasn't about her choosing him. This was about whether she could show him he deserved to be chosen. Park's security chief would later tell her that his boss had already arranged everything for her departure. Bank accounts in 3 countries. Recommendation letters from legitimate businesses she'd never worked for. A scholarship to a translation program in New York that would explain her sudden move. Park had been preparing to let her go since the moment his rivals started watching her. Had been building her an escape route while simultaneously falling deeper in love. The extraction team waiting outside, they had 2 sets of orders. One to take her to safety. One to take Park in the opposite direction, ensuring he'd never accidentally cross her path again. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Standing in that parking garage, with the wire crackling and Park's men ready to pull her away, Marietta had no idea how completely he'd already said goodbye. Sir, the security chief says quietly, we need to move her. Now. Park nods. Doesn't look at Marietta. Can't look at her because if he does, he won't be able to let go. Take her to. No, I don't want to. Marietta's voice cuts through his words. She steps forward. Not away from the danger. Toward it. Her hand finds Park's, fingers threading through his, and she feels him freeze, feels the tremor that runs through his entire body at her touch. Then Marietta speaks, in Korean, clear and deliberate so everyone listening, Park's men, the wire, the rival gang monitoring the feed, can understand exactly what she's choosing. Nanun tangshin yul midoyo. I trust you. Park's eyes snap to hers. Disbelief. Hope. Fear. She switches to formal Korean speech, the kind that carries weight in his world. The kind that signals intention, commitment, a choice that can't be unmade. And I choose to stand beside you. The parking garage goes silent. Park's composure, the control he's maintained for 42 years, through gang wars and territory battles and his brother's near death, shatters completely. His forehead drops to hers. Right there in front of his security team, in front of whoever's listening through David's wire. A powerful man making himself vulnerable because the woman he loves just chose him back. I don't deserve you, he whispers in English. His voice breaks. But I'll spend my life trying to. Marietta's free hand comes up to cup his face. You've been trying for 6 months. I just didn't know it. His arms wrap around her. Not possessive. Protective, yes, but also desperate. Like he's holding something precious he never thought he'd be allowed to keep. Behind them, Park's men move with efficient precision. David will be in police custody within the hour, corporate espionage charges. Nothing linking back to organized crime. The rival gang's surveillance equipment will be quietly destroyed. The wire's last transmission will be static. But Park doesn't let go of Marietta's hand. Not when his men brief him on security protocols. Not when they drive back through Seoul's night streets. Not until they reach her apartment building. His building, and he walks her to her door on the 14th floor. I'll have men positioned on every exit, he says quietly. Cameras upgraded. Background checks on every new tenant. You'll be safe, Marietta finishes. I know, because you've been keeping me safe for 6 months. He looks at her like he's still not sure this is real, like she might change her mind. I meant what I said, she tells him. I choose this. I choose you. Park's hand comes up, hovering near her face, asking permission. She leans into his touch, and when he finally kisses her, gentle, careful, like she's something that might break, Marietta understands what real power looks like. Not control, not dominance, but a dangerous man choosing to be gentle with someone he loves. You've stayed with Marietta and Park for this long. You've felt every moment of his 6-month silent courtship. You've ached for her choice. And now you want to see them happy, don't you? Here's what I want. Before I give you that satisfaction, subscribe. Because stories like this, stories about dangerous men learning gentleness, about women brave enough to choose complicated love, they don't tell themselves. I tell them, for you, but only if you subscribe. Don't let this be the last one you see. Subscribe now, then let's see their happy ending together. 6 weeks later, Marietta sits in her corner office on the 42nd floor of Park Enterprises' main building. Director of International Communications. The business card still feels surreal. The engagement ring on her finger is modest by his standards. A single diamond, elegant but practical. Something she can wear while working, while typing, while living her life. He'd wanted to give her something extravagant. She'd asked for something that wouldn't get in the way. He'd smiled and said, "Whatever you want." Through the glass wall, she can see Park in the hallway outside a board meeting. He's talking with executives, all business, but his eyes keep drifting to her office, checking, making sure she's okay. When the meeting ends, he appears in her doorway, doesn't enter without permission. "May I come in?" Marietta looks up from her laptop, smiling. "It's your company. It's your office." He steps inside anyway, closing the door. "How was the video conference with the London team?" "Perfect. The translation software you commissioned works better than I expected." Park moves to her desk, but stops a careful distance away. "I brought you tea." He always brings her tea at 4 o'clock. Never coffee. He remembered from that first cafe observation that she switches to tea in the afternoon. "Thank you." She takes the cup and their fingers brush. 6 weeks of dating, and he still treats every touch like a privilege. He sits in the chair across from her desk, not beside her, asking permission with distance. "May I sit closer?" His voice is quiet. Marietta's smile softens. She moves to the small sofa near the window, and he follows. Sits beside her, but doesn't touch her until she leans against him. "May I hold you?" "Park." She turns to face him. "You ask me this every time, and I will until the day I die." His arms wrap around her carefully. "You gave me permission to love you, but I'll never assume permission to touch you." He means it. This man who controls half of Seoul's underground, who can make people disappear with a phone call, asks her permission before every kiss, every embrace, every moment of closeness. Marietta cups his face, bringing his forehead to hers the way he did that night in the parking garage. "May I kiss you?" he whispers. Instead of answering, she closes the distance. The kiss is tender, patient, full of promises they're still learning how to keep. His hand tangles in her hair. Her arms wrap around his neck. And for a moment, they're not a mafia boss and his translator. They're just two people who found each other in a hospital at 2 in the morning and spent 6 months learning how to be brave enough to love. When they finally break apart, Park's thumb brushes her cheek. "I love you," he says in Korean. "I know," she responds in the same language. "You've been showing me for 6 months. I'm just finally catching up." That night, 3 floors apart, Marietta's phone buzzes. Park's text, "Are you safe? Do you need anything?" She smiles, typing back, "I'm safe. Because of you. I've been safe for 183 days. His response comes immediately, 184 now, and every day after. On the news, a brief report mentions David Morrison's arrest for corporate espionage. Nothing about gangs or wires or Christmas markets. Just a clean story that won't touch her life. Marietta turns off the TV and looks at the white roses on her coffee table. Delivered this morning, as they are every Friday. But this week they came with a card. In Park's careful handwriting, "May I continue sending these? MJ." Even the flowers ask permission. She picks up her phone and texts, "Yes, always yes." 3 floors up, Park reads her message and allows himself to smile. The kind of smile his security team has only seen since that night at the Christmas market when an innocent woman chose to love a dangerous man. Because real power isn't control. Real power is a man who runs an empire but asks permission to hold the woman he loves. Real power is an innocent woman who sees the good in a complicated soul and chooses to stand beside him anyway. And sometimes the bravest love stories don't start with safety. They start at 2 in the morning in a hospital, with a stranger's hand in yours and 5 words in a language that isn't your own. Your brother will survive this. Park never forgot those words, and Marietta never regretted saying them.